Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. If you've never been here before, my name is Rory, and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube page, which is a corner of the internet where we get into cozy narratives. And today is no exception because we are doing Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop, something that we've done twice before. We did it around Christmas time, and we did another one at the beginning of spring. And today, I believe, is the first day of summer. I'm sure people are rushing to their keyboard to correct me if I'm wrong. But nonetheless, even if it isn't, it's close enough. And the reason why we time our returns to our little Fox Curio Floating Bookshop tabletop RPG with the seasons is because it is structured around its own little seasons. Although it does have 5 seasons, so at some point I'm going to have to do 2 in 1. But if you are here, I'm going to explain the game briefly. I'm not going to do as much explanation as I did in the initial one, so you can check that one out if you want. Yeah, we're just going to create continuing tales of our little fox bookkeeper. If you are here live, there is a live chat there, and the live chat is a part of this. The live chat is part of where I get ideas and recommendations, not just the game, but people help me interpret things and come up with characters. So if you're welcome to join in there and pitch your ideas. If you're not watching live though, the significant advantage you have is you can jump around the stream, and to make that easier, down in the description below there will be timestamps that let you go to the beginning explanation of the game or just see what we came up with at the end, whatever's most interesting to you. So let's get on to the game, a little bit of explanation for it, and so on. All right, this part of the show is called litgames. It is the show. It stands for literature games, which is my kind of catch-all for what is a lot of different genres of kind of indie tabletop RPG stuff. Solo tabletop RPGs, journaling games, lyric games, there's 15 other names for them. But basically, they're games that, in one way or another, give you ideas for a story and a character, and then I write it out, is what I do. And that's what we're here to do. Either start a story, describe a character, something like that. We're going to continue a story on this stream. And we are going to continue a story that is set in the world of Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop. A year upon a river. Jumpstore says, I got an Invisalign today. Ooh. My teeth feel really irritated and I want to bite down really hard and trying to ignore it. So please do your best to distract me tonight, Marie. Well, I'll certainly try. Failing that, I don't know, try sleeping endlessly. That's what I do when I have headaches and things. Although I imagine it's probably hard to do with an Invisalign. 22 hours out of the day. Anyways, you may have noticed that the art on the stream was stunning, and that is a 2-part process there. The actual art, like the line art of it, is in this book, because this book has this beautiful, I guess you'd call it kind of like Beatrix Potter style art. But you'll notice it's not colored. Today, although normally I do the coloring on my own, I didn't have a lot of time. And my lovely partner, who is a professional artist, colored it for me. So I appreciate that. Which is why it probably looks better than usual. So bravo to my partner. This is a picture for this season of Burn. So what is Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop? Realize I got ahead of myself there. It's a game where you take a pack of cards, regular playing cards, and you draw them, and based on what you draw, you get prompts. The structure, like the world of it, is you're running a floating bookshop, a bookshop that travels along a river, and it has a little map in the game and various locations you can go to. As you sort of travel down the river and go to locations, you open your shop and you sell books. And they use dice and they use cards and so on to determine how many books you sell, and you get money and so on to try and purchase more books. And you know, it's meant to simulate running a business. And I'll be honest, those mechanics are very good. I don't interact with them much on the stream because we're mostly about just creating stories for this stream, but I will say on my own, I would probably interact with them more. But I do want to try and show them more. In the last couple of streams, I've mostly shown traveling and stuff in this game, and I showed fishing last time, which I hope to get to again because it was fun. But I am going to try to actually do like a store day. 18 months, says Jump Store. Wow. I was lucky enough not to have to do any of those like braces or any of those teeth corrections, but that's nuts to me, 18 months. But the season we're in is called Burn. And the way Burn works is it's basically summer, and I'm going to read the description of the season. GS says that little toad is too adorable. It really is. I'm going to read the writing in this is also really beautiful in the Fox Curio book. By the way, if you folks have not bought a copy for yourself and you play this game and you're interested in it, you should know that it's currently in a bundle called Tabletop RPGs for Palestine, which is obviously a good cause. And it comes with a lot of other stuff, some other stuff that I've played on the stream before in that bundle. It's not just solo tabletop RPGs, although this one is. So if you're looking to get it, you can get it for a pretty good price in that bundle. I do recommend. That's on itch.io or itch.io. Okay, so the description of Burn is: the sun casts its bright eye over the land, baking the river and animal folk alike. To cool off, animal folk swim in the river and lie under the shade of the willow. The surrounding land dries out and everything becomes crisp and quick to spark. The water level drops under the blazing heat, flies buzz slowly over the water, and the nights become long as the sun sets later and later until it doesn't set at all on the solstice, turning life on the river into a delirious state. And like all the other seasons, they run them for about 20 days. So they're short because it's a game. And they usually have details, and they usually have some sort of event or two. In this case, there's the Reed Festival and the Harvest Feast, and then what was just described, the Burn Solstice, which is when the sun does not set for the entire day, also known as the time of the midnight sun. And I'd love to just play all of those forever. I think if I was to be I think I have to what's the word I'm looking for here? I think if I was to be a single, I don't know why it took so long to get that thought back. I think if I was to be a single game streamer, this might be it, but I don't know that I have enough content to decide. Anyways, we're gonna draw cards. Is what we're gonna do. Anyways, the mechanic for this season is not one I'm probably going to be able to use much, but the way it works is as you draw cards each day, you get the weather. That's one thing that you draw cards for. If you draw 3 thunderstorms in a row, you spark a fire. Now, obviously, forest fires are a pretty significant problem. They pollute the air, they destroy forests and whatever else. We're having a problem, especially in my province, with a lot of forest fires every summer now. The forest fires in this setting are not the evil ones, if that makes sense. For those who don't know, forest fires are a part of the natural cycle of a forest. So this is not a catastrophic thing. It's considered an expected thing. The forest will burn. And the game is very much tied to that sort of pagan, everything's a cycle ethos. Pagan in the sense that they're very connected to seasons and nature. Not pagan in the sense of multiple gods or anything like that. So the game itself is very much tied to that. And I find this interesting because the thunderstorms are there and they set off the forest fire. Now, I don't think I'm going to be playing long enough that I will randomly pull 3 thunderstorms. So if we even end up pulling a thunderstorm, I think I'm just going to say that that starts off the fire for the ambiance. When we first started getting our forest fires, I remember I was working them into a story I was writing at the time. Jumpstore says, my city just felt with a brush fire near downtown. In fact, that it happened in one of our more windy days also didn't help. Oof. Yeah. For us, like, probably one of the bigger problems, it does, you know, they do sometimes make it to towns and destroy them. We had a town that was just outright destroyed, doesn't exist anymore a few years ago. But the real problem is the air quality. That's where the real damage is done. Anyways, we're not here to stress about that. Stress about that after this, because, you know, it's not a thing to ignore, but... I think probably the best thing for me to do is just to start this game before I keep getting myself off track. We pick weather. Let's pick the weather. At the beginning of each day, you draw 1 card. I'm going to shuffle these just a little bit because I don't remember if I had split up, if this was a split up deck or not. Also, despite the fact that a massive heat wave is going on, I'm willing to bet Jumpstore has some tea. Am I wrong? Oh no, you have the teeth thing. Is that going to ruin your ability to drink tea? Yeah, Jumpstore, I feel bad for people who have to evacuate. I do it in a very minor way, evacuate once when I was a kid. House behind the house we lived in caught on fire and burned to the ground. And of course, that's close enough it can get on your roof. So they make you leave your house. And we just had to sit in some random neighborhood person's, and they were kind, like they didn't have to let us in, sit in their living room as like a 6-year-old or whatever I was. Okay, we draw a card. It is a 3 of hearts. This represents the weather. You draw another card, and this represents the duration of that weather. The second card I draw is a king of hearts. I think I might not have shuffled these very well. If the duration is in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, draw a third card and read the weather from it. That's the weather for the rest of the day. Okay, so let's do that. We had a 3 first, which is hot and humid. And the customer forecast is quiet. We'll come back to that. And we have a king of hearts as our second one, and that is all day. Jumpstore says, I had tea later with my dinner because of the heat and the height of the summer. Can't stop me from enjoying a good cup of tea. You might have not said good there, but YouTube in its wisdom has blocked half your message with the heart symbol. Invisalign certainly won't. Oh, I see. Yes. Well, I don't know enough about them to know if they ever would. Okay, so we have a hot and humid day all day, which is good because the story I started writing to boost us into this assumes that it was a hot and humid day. Ah, it's so lovely to be back. I do think we're going to deal with some customers so that the customer forecast is quiet. Okay. At the start of each day, and I know Witchery is in here, but if she was, she'd probably be annoyed by the fact that it needs dice and cards. From enjoying a hot cup of tea is what it said. Oh, okay. It was chamomile because my seasonal allergies are acting up. I'm also hoping that chamomile's anti-inflammatory properties will make my teeth feel less irritated. Well, has it worked its magic? I have a D20 here. We roll a D20 at the start of the day to see what chores we have to do to start the day. I've gotten myself a 15. And a 15 is what? You've been putting off the bookkeeping, but unfortunately it must be done. Calculate inventory if you haven't done it for a while. Go through all your receipts and look through the recent numbers. How have you been faring? Do you need a restock? Inventory day. Tammy says, for some reason my new apartment thinks it needs to have the heat on. It's 79 degrees here and 93 degrees in my apartment. My Canadian butt doesn't know what that means, so let me look it up. 73 Fahrenheit to Celsius. 22 degrees. Nope, wait, 79, not 73. 22 is too hot for me already. 26 degrees. Yeesh. Ugh, somebody's saving money on the power bill. And then 93? 33 degrees Celsius is too hot. Okay, so we're going to be doing some bookkeeping in the morning. That's not all day. Okay. It's not a holiday. End of day, you do your calculations, which I probably will not do on stream. Which means that I need to go back up to customers. When you flip a customer card, it represents a notable customer coming into the shop. Consult the prompts on the following pages based on the suit and rank of the card to see who this customer is and how they interact with you in the shop. At the end of the day, shuffle the deck before beginning the next. As I understand it, you draw as many as the customer forecast allows. I haven't looked that up in like 2 months, so I'm sorry if that's wrong, but that's the way I remember it. Jump Store says, in a sense, though, at this point, I'm wondering if my neighbors have some special powdered sugar I could run on my gums instead. For those who don't know, there is a certain form of intoxicant that has a numbing effect. All right, the 3 cards I picked up. I haven't really looked at them specifically yet. Let's look at our first one. It is a 5 of diamonds, which is going to be what? This is hearts, spades, clubs, diamonds. 5, a gruff animal. They are a large animal who speaks in a deep voice. They are somewhat shy and don't want to share much about themselves. When you get to know them, they will tell you wistfully about their favorite childhood books. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. We've done a few things here. We know what the weather is today. We know what we have to do in the morning, which is our bookkeeping and inventories. And that's enough of a prompt for me to go off and start. But while I'm doing that, you know, you're welcome to add stuff for the inventory and bookkeeping, ideas for that. Why don't you folks in chat think about what gruff animal is it that comes into our floating bookshop? What kind of childhood books will they reveal to be their favorite? What might their name be, and so on? Try and think through stuff like that. And then when I'm done with the morning chores, I'll engage with the new customer. So I'm going to read you what I wrote so far. It's not much. I just wanted to sort of remind myself how to write in the style that we were writing for this. Lou, to remind you, we have an old gray fox. Well, it's a fox that's gray because they're old. Who came into this bookshop recently, just found it. And we might get a chance to go into a little bit about some of the lore I was developing about that, because we hinted at it at the end of the last one, at our Bloom episode. You were a traveler wandering the land. Yeah, that's our backstory. I'm not going to go through all this again. We went through this in the first episode in detail, how to build the character, but just Lupercalia is our name, but we go by Lou. Ooh, and Tammy says they got a unicorn squishmallow. That's very cute. Lou pulled his nightly tea from the ice chest for a cool morning cup. Burn had sweltered in on a wave of still and thick air that clung to his fur. He was bound to get a hot spot in his undercoat if he didn't do all he could do to stay cool, but even the river was flowing slower and warmer. The melt was nearly done, and so the season only promised warmer waters yet. Also, that would make for the right conditions for the mosquitoes. What's a better word for this? That would... Still, Lou dabbed the cool dew of his cup of iced tea over the gray fur of his snout. Let's have the Necronomicon in our inventory, Zombie Wolf says. A bat for the customer. That's cool. Over the gray fur of his snout. To some extent, the old fox was marinating in the moment, enjoying. He was enamored. Oh, screw you. He was enamored by the rising sun and how the shores buzzed to life. However, to perhaps a greater extent, Lou was avoiding starting his day. The shelves of his little bookshop floating out there on the river were getting more and more gaps, like a pup losing its young teeth. The receipts were piled up high enough that the spike had no more point left exposed enough to capture more of them. This meant the floor behind his humble counter and hand crank cash machine was littered with loose receipts, as if a tree of accounting had shed its dull leaves for tax season. Tammy says, I went to the top of a peak when I was camping, tried to wave to you, Rory. I could see the Canadian mountain ridges. Oh, that's who that was. Yeah. No, I was looking south. I'm glad you got a chance to be up on the mountains. I love mountains. I was going to, for a while, do proper alpine climbing. I had books on it. I had equipment for it. And then the course I was going to take, because you have to learn some stuff about, well, basically various ways not to die in a mountain. Because I'm talking about like going into past the point where stuff grows. For those who don't know, I'm a rock climber. The course I was going to take just that year after running for years couldn't get insurance for it, and they didn't run it. And the other one cost $8,000 more than the one I was looking at, so I couldn't do anything about it. Jumpstore says, Rory, did you have to mention teeth right now? I did. Just my cross to bear, I suppose. GS says you gave him the idea, Jumpstore. That's true enough. But it's not like you're to blame or anything. But if you put a thought in my head, the chances are it will come out. I always tell people who tell me something before, like, we're going to a party, and they're like, listen, he recently got divorced, so don't. And I'll be like, if you didn't tell me this, I would definitely not have ever brought it up. But now that you've told me this, I'm almost certainly going to bring it up, because that is how my brain works. Tammy says there was still 4 feet of snow. Oh, wow. It's nice to know snow still exists somewhere. Lou snarled at the busy work, wishing he could sip his iced tea and fish, but relenting that he was a grown fox with tasks to complete. Thus, as the buggy, humid air I think I have another way to say this. As the bugs in the air grew thicker, Lou sipped his tea. What would an animal use? Like, they're kind of rustic. Like, they're not super rustic. But, like, what's a fun thing he'd be using for calculation? I feel like an abacus. But, like, is an abacus too far off? Like, that's too ancient? And if it is an abacus, is it like an abacus of, well, I don't know, little seed pods? Zombie Wolf says, I hope you tell your friends that you have quite the comedic cast of characters in your chat every Tuesday and Thursday. It's a bold assumption that I have friends. Jumpstore says, I hate humid summer days. It's impossible to feel cool without air conditioning on those days. Well, Jumpstore, let me tell you, a place you should never go. Vancouver. All it is humid. Jess likes the abacus idea, but like how do we make it, I don't know, is twee the right word? How do we make it like cute? Beatrix pottery. I feel like there's an opportunity there. I like the image of him sitting there sipping his warming tea. Little bugs growing, the light growing outside, whatever else, but that he's using a bit of an unexpected, you know, a thing that reminds you of the otherness of this world. Nuts or chestnuts. Chestnuts is a great idea. Or acorns even. Acorns. I feel like I said acorns, which is funny, but inaccurate. Ooh, I like that idea too, Zombie Wolf. I like the idea that it's not all one type of thing. I think that fits with the ethos of the game, which is like, it's meant to be people that live more in harmony with nature, and I feel like if you're living in harmony in nature, you're not going to pick too much of one thing. Zombie Wolf's suggestion is an abacus, but like with seed pods, and then like GS's nuts and chestnuts, but also snail shells and nut shells and stuff. And I think that's pretty good because, truthfully, even before abacuses, like to our best knowledge, in like Athenian times, they used largely little stones to count things. The abacus is kind of a grow on that. A grow, he said, like that's how that word works. Lou sipped his tea. Inflict a snail shell. Is there a direction you go consistently on an abacus? Like, is it right to left or left to right? Like, I've touched them and I've played around with them, but I've never really seriously worked one. Does anybody actually know if there's like a set way that an abacus is used, or is it literally just pick a side and that's the side of calculation? Right to left, GS says. Is knowing that admitting an age range? Oh, Zombie Wolf says it depends on the person and the culture. Oh, interesting. GS says, I don't know, I'm just being a smartass. Well, I think that's most of my chat, isn't it? I mean, I say that with affection, but I don't think it would be unfair to say we all like being kind of smartasses. I am curious what you know about the different cultures, though, Zombie Wolf. Says, the bugs in the air grew thicker. Lou sipped his tea and flicked his abacus right to left. I don't know, Jumpstore, let me know. The only thing I've established about the tea is that he made it warm last night, and then he stored it in the ice box overnight at the extra so that he could drink it cool in the morning, because he wanted his tea, but he's a fox. He's got fur, so he can't handle the heat too well, and especially in the morning when it's the warmest. Well, it's not the warmest in the morning, but it's warm enough in the morning. Thus says the bugs in the air grew thicker. Lou sipped his tea and flicked his abacus right to left. It was a funny little abacus. One of few kids. Tammy confirms that right to left sounds right. That sort of feels right to me. Like, if I'm thinking of portrayals in television and TV, it feels like right to left was what I saw in my mind's eye. But if I'm wrong, I mean, I'm on the internet. So, 67,000 people will tell me. I say that like that happens a lot. It really doesn't. In general, I've been... One of the upsides of not getting a lot of views is you also don't get a lot of those people who probably don't even want to be here and just sort of stumble across it because it's getting traction, and therefore those people will watch a bit and then just get very annoyed with you as if you have stolen money from them or something. There it is. This little map is what I was looking for. Zombie Wolf says, well, Rory, do you want me to answer that, or do you want me to play this game? Because we cannot do both. You know what? That's a fair point. Let's stay on topic. This is the map of the city. We started, I believe, in Thistledown. I don't even remember if we went to, was Rewberry where we had the little festival? I think we ended in Roost last time. We just sort of showed up in it. So one of these three, Thistledown, Rewberry, or Roost. I guess it could be Rewberry. I want to say somebody traded the abacus, like a kid made it and traded it for a book. Jumpstore says, if it's a hot tea, I think it should be something refreshing like spearmint matcha tea. Ooh, yummy. Or if it's iced tea, then I say a raspberry hibiscus. Oh, that sounds good. How about I get raspberry hibiscus tea? GS says, yes, we did end in Roost. Yeah, it's a memorable name, isn't it? By the way, I recently got this shirt as a gift. And I used to wear actually fancier colored shirts in streams. And then at some point I was like, nobody cares. But I really like the shirt, and I didn't have much context to wear it. And I was like, I want to feel like a little fox on a summer river. So this is my Fox on a Summer River shirt. So I guess Rewberry, because that's where we had that relationship with that kid who we were jumping in the thawing water with. So it was a funny little abacus. One of the Rewberry kids. Jumpstore says, I actually love tea so much I make my own tea blends when I have the time. You see, that's probably where I would find more interest in tea, because I like making things. Like I've talked about the weird collection of devices I have in my kitchen. And since finding out that I cannot eat gluten, that's only expanded. My most recent acquisition, also being a gift, was a surprisingly cheap little mill, so I can mill some grains myself. So unfortunately, one of the downsides is that mills are expensive, and so when you get something that's milled, even if it itself does not contain wheat, it's probably processed in a place that did. And even the ones that don't say it's contaminated often are. It was a funny little abacus. One of the Rewberry kids had fashioned out of abandoned snail shells. God, this game is just such fun to write in. Like, it's got such a vibe. Out of abandoned snail shells and acorns. GS's shirt looks sharp on you. Well, thank you. He said, feigning confidence. Jumpstore also liked the shirt. Thank you. Yeah, I thought it looked good. Blue is not my favorite color. My favorite color is green, but my eyes are blue, so blue things usually go better with me. What's the color you can't wear, chat? I think everybody has that color. What is the color that it just never really looks right? Either it looks outright terrible. Like my partner, I've mentioned before, is of Japanese descent. And like a lot of Japanese people, there's a lot of shades of yellow cannot wear because of the undertones of her skin. Which is unfortunate because she does like bright colors. It was a funny little abacus. One of the Rewberry kids had fashioned out of abandoned snail shells and acorns, hollowed out by grubs, and then left to weather in the winter. This might sound odd, but it was not unusual to fashion such devices out of forage along... What's the name of this river again? Does this river not have a name? I never even noticed that. I guess it's just the river then. GS says beige/tan. Hello, Dawn of the Dead. Well, we know your skin tone then. Zombie Wolf says, I say absolutely no one can pull off beige anything. I can think of some that can do it, but it's not particularly common. You have to have some pretty interesting color going on your skin where, like, you don't want it to compete with it. Oh, your gruff animal suggestion was a boar. Truthfully, Lou had already fashioned one when he first took on the floating bookshop. But he liked the Rewberry kids one more. Oh, I forgot to mention it was traded. The kids had built it to trade for what book? Jumpstore says, I don't know why anyone would want to look like a giant band-aid. Fair enough. I think it depends on the quality of the material too. Like, you could argue that things like linen, sort of raw linen, is beige, but like a person with very dark skin tones in a linen suit, I think, is quite sharp. Not me, no. Tammy says mustard yellow. I'm a fan of mustard yellow, but it is a hard. You got to have some pretty specific hair, eye, and skin color to pull off. Zombie Wolf says, I probably wouldn't be able to pull off pastel or neon colors because I have very pasty skin. Well, yeah, me too. Although I have the darkest skin of my family, really. I can't remember what the kid was, whether it was a rat or something like that. Unfortunately, and I'd have to open another document to find it. So that I'm just trying to think, what book would they have made the abacus to trade for? Like, not a real book, to be clear. Something that is evocative of this kind of world. Like the adventures of, Warrior Mouse or something. I'm surprisingly stuck on this for what is a pretty simple proposition. I'm sure you guys will get it right away, but I am not having an idea about it. I'm going to drink some water because it's getting warm. Tammy says, my favorite colors are pink, gray, and black. All solid colors. Good contrast in there, too. I like high contrast at times. Zombie Wall says Redwall. I mean, that's a good shout, but I wasn't looking for a real book. I want them to have their own little animal versions of things, whether that's puns or whatever else. But yeah, if you guys haven't read Redwall, I have not read all the Redwall books, but I read something from it. I rarely read entire series of books. Like, I don't know. Usually I read like a book or two and then I'm like, I get the vibe. But I don't have that desire to like exist in other worlds, I guess. Which sounds weird for a writer, but I don't know. There's a hair I can split here, but it's not interesting to anyone but me. So I'm going to drop the topic about how I interact with stories. But the simple version is I think I probably just lose focus. Like I just did. The kids had built it to trade for. Is there some way we could make a koi reference to Redwall? Tammy says, yeah, my daughter says I need to venture out and try different colors, and then has several emojis implying a kind of shyness about that. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Do what makes you feel good. When it comes to your clothes anyways, like the amount of things that we don't have to do. I mean, there's no harm in just trying it on in a change room, but I'm going to go for the laziest one. The Three Musketeers. A book Lou felt they might have been a bit young for. But still, thought little harm could come of the trade. Do I do that break the fourth wall thing or talk to the audience? Yeah. The abacus, not the abacus. Attack on Koi Pond. Oh, I like that. Adventures of the Coyote Kid. He threw in the attack on Koi Pond. As well. The kids left fighting over who would get what first. Now, the abacus might sound like odd materials for its construction to you, perhaps even simple garbage, but it was not unusual for the river folk to fashion such devices out of simple forage. Truthfully, Lou had already fashioned his own abacus. When he first took on... Man, what is with me? That's weird. When he first took on the floating bookshop, but he liked the Rewberry Kids one more. It had the imperceptible glow of pride, of youthful effort, with a dash of that endearing shabbiness. Such childhood projects often carry. Lizzie Rose is here. Hello, Lizzie. Good to see you. Jumpstore says, I personally didn't like The Three Musketeers. I don't think I've ever actually read it. Like, I've seen movies based on it. The protagonists were morally deplorable. I'll go be honest. A lot of these like old classic books I read, and I'm like, this is the good guy? Some of the old operas too, the song, and God knows I'm never going to remember the name of anything in my entire life. Like, nothing needs to have a name around me because I don't remember it. Is that why I describe things well? Because I never remember the noun? What is with me today? All over the place. I was talking about the opera song that Pavarotti was famous for, which is a really beautiful, like, heart-wrenching sound, sung in Italian. It's from an opera. It's like his iconic song, kind of mournful. It has swells and drops, and a choir of women in the background that accompany it. I listened to it for years and had my own interpretation based on the atmosphere of that song, what it was. You know, it was a bit like lost love or ecstasy of life or something. What it's actually about is a man who is trying to basically force a woman to marry him, who's like a rich debutante. And then he creates this situation where she agrees that if she can figure out his name by like sunrise or something, she'll marry him. Or can't. And for some reason, I don't know the whole opera, so whatever reason, that is hard to do. And so what she does, because she's like a big countess of some sort, or a ruler or something, she tells these like maidens that work for her that if they can't figure out his name by sunrise, she's going to execute them all. And so the song, which I thought was just some pretty love song, is him singing about how he knows he's going to win, and then she's got to marry him, and he's super proud of himself. And then this choir of women behind him are just these working class people that are going to know they're going to get executed because they just can't, they have no chance of figuring out his name. And I was like, I wish I'd never looked this up. I didn't want to know what this song was about, apparently. Big Drew is here. It's been a time, Big Drew. I hope things are going okay for you. Sorry I'm late. I was making lasagna. What did I miss? What kind of lasagna were you making? You missed a little fox doing taxes. Despite the musing and daydreaming of Lou. Zombie Wolf says, so now you say you made a lasagna. As a Sicilian, I must know, did you make a lasagna or did you bake a frozen one? And Big Drew says, I made it! Frozen lasagnas for the birds. Yeah, exactly, Jumpstore. I made a proper Italian lasagna once. Like, I made the pasta myself. I have a pasta maker. This was before I couldn't eat gluten. I ground the meat myself, which included grinding up, not bacon, but I think that's probably the easiest way to get people on the same page as to what it was. And I think there was some pork and stuff like that, and maybe it was veal or something in there. And wine and bechamel and like made from scratch. I made it all from scratch. Cost a fortune for what it was. Like $100 or something I spent on it. And I made it for this party that we went to. And I went to that party and nobody cared. It was like I don't know, they just didn't get along with it. I guess it was too rich because Canadians tend to eat salty things, not so much fatty things. So maybe. Despite the musing and daydreaming of Lou, he did eventually slide the last chestnut across his abacus and slot away the last box of receipts. He had a few he had an extensive list of book orders. Zombie Will says, I really love hearing Rory go all out with the food he makes, but dang, that's so sad. One way to make me die inside is not to praise my cooking. Yeah. He had an extensive list of books to order, not book orders. That doesn't make any sense. Books to order. But was a bit shy on the cash to cover the order. So, he turned his attention to trying to draw in more customers. A few had cycled in and out during the morning. But most just read a few covers, then scurried off to swim away the humid day. I think that's probably one of the most labor-intensive things I've made. I mean, I guess, you know, Christmas dinner is always labor-intensive, but like, far and away, as far as just one dish, there was like so much that went into it. I think I got it. I think the recipe I was using was, like most chefs, he's a bit of a problematic guy. But he is a good Italian food historian. I can't think of his name. Ever. Like, why do I don't know what's the matter with my brain. A few had cycled in, and what I can do is write. So let's go back to that. But most just read a few covers, then scurried off to swim away the humid day. It was around noon that Lou was eyeing his fishing pole. Given how quiet the shop was, when in snuffled a shy little boar. GS says moussaka took me all day to make. Similar experience, yeah, for sure. I do really like moussaka. I think I probably prefer it to lasagna, but you know, I guess they're similar. A and B, lasagna is so diverse. Big Drew says, anybody else drained from the heat today? The highest my mercury hit today was 170 degrees Fahrenheit, 41 degrees Celsius, and I was working outdoors. That is terrible. The hottest I've been in, I think, I don't trust my memory of this, but I seem to recall that it was 42 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity. Now, I don't know if that's even possible, so maybe I misunderstood a memory or I'm misremembering it. It was 42 degrees when I was reading it, and I was working in a field. It was for a Canada Day ceremony. I was kind of it doesn't matter what I did. It was a boring job anyways that required me to constantly cycle around the yard. Zombie Wolf says, my favorite YouTuber who does historical cooking is Max Miller. Watch Max Miller every week. I love that he goes into the history of the thing he's making instead of just showing how to make food. Up until the point that I discovered I was celiac, I used to very often try his recipes. I have his cookbook, actually. The best thing I've ever made that Max Miller introduced me to was bieroks. And now I can't eat them anymore. And now I'm sad. Yeah, but it was so hot on that day that I would walk halfway into the field, talk to someone from like a distance, and have to go back and sit in the shade. Like it was hard to explain. Like you just didn't function above 40 degrees. You just start to having to do things in little bursts. Now, admittedly, some people are better with the heat. I'm not good with the heat, period. 25 degrees is a lot for me. But I think there's a point once you're crossing 40. I think no matter who you are, it starts that radiation. You start to feel it. What was the boar's name, GS? Zombie Wolf says, I'm so envious where I have his book on my Amazon wish list. Well, I hope you get a chance to try some of it. It's good. Grimbley, I love it. What's the last name? He was a citizen of Roost, where the bookshop had been moored since last season. Lou knew that. And that his name was Grimbley. Because he would often Lou's storefront down at the dock. But find cause to scurry off when Lou went out to greet him. Fair enough, Zombie Wolf. Well, definitely is. Some of the recipes were as a vegetarian, I can't eat them all, but I'm hoping to gain more history knowledge from the book if the book is anything like his videos. Yeah, I think also you probably won't have too hard a time with that because a lot of, well, I guess there's a lot of fish in old cooking, but a lot of cooking doesn't really include meat because meat was really expensive and hard to get. But you do see a lot of fish, I guess, so that would probably be the trickier part. But sometimes with things like that, like the actual recipes are not usually great, But they give you good ideas. Like you can take a thing and you can say, oh, if I added parsnips to this to replace that and so on, I would be able to do that. Some of my favorite dishes, by the way, are vegetarian. I do a lot of vegetarian cooking. My philosophy is, if you want good vegetarian food, find a culture that traditionally, for one reason or another, had a lot of vegetarianism. Because a lot of the time, what happens when people make vegetarian food is they just take something that was supposed to be made with meat and then they add something else in as an alternative. And that doesn't really work. That doesn't play to the strengths of those ingredients. So like, you know, Indian food has really excellent vegetarian meals. You know, you can do like a mung bean dal or something, and that'd be vegetarian and fantastic. Because he would often eye Lou's storefront down at the dock, but find cause to scurry off when Lou went out to greet him. This led Lou to ask around about the frumpy little boar. And most spoke well of him, but Big Drew says Grimbley is a great name, by the way. It really is. Good job, GS. But none knew much about it. Knew much of his life. He was a shy thing. And Lou knew he couldn't be too forward, or he would rush off into the undergrowth again. Zombie Wolf says, I love experimenting and substituting ingredients in recipes. I say, if you're not going to play around with a recipe, are you going to claim your dish as your own? Exactly. Yeah. You know, cooking for yourself is the fan fiction of cooking. The idea is that you want to put your own ideas into it. In fact, I'm a pretty accomplished cook at this point. Like, when I say accomplished, I mean as, like, I've worked in kitchens. I wasn't amazing at that. When I say accomplished, I just mean, like, there's not a lot of things I can't do with cooking. But I'm a pretty accomplished cook. And because of that, I have enough knowledge of basic techniques that sometimes I like bad cookbooks. Because bad cookbooks will be missing ingredients or just make outright mistakes, things they shouldn't have done. And so I like fixing the recipes and making them good, because there's usually a good idea in there. Wibbles could be his last name. That's so cute. Good job, GS. We're going to you for cute names from now on. Shy thing is a weird term. He was a shy fellow. And Lou knew this was the kind of customer. The kind of... I don't like him thinking of him as a customer. The kind of folk that he couldn't be too forward with. Or the poor thing would startle off into the undergrowth again. I'm doing that thing where I'm editing sentences, and that's never a good idea on this stream, because that's a good way for me to get nothing done. GS says master recipe fixer. The one thing I do fix on all recipes is, hey, it's 2024. You can buy a digital scale for $15, probably less if you get it used. Can we stop doing so much volumetric measuring. Measure by grams. Volumetric is what's good for like 1940 when the way that you weighed things was with, you know, springs and scale. But this is not that. It's very cheap to get a reliable scale now, and weight is so much more useful. Now, I understand that. I'm not shaming anyone for using volume. I'm just saying that when you are a cook with some training, it's rare to ever use volume measurement for numerous reasons. There's my rant of the day. GS says the processed food makers have heard your plea, Rory. Indeed. Lou pretended to read a book and let the snorting guest browse his store in peace. Slowly, and with frequent nervous glances, the pink, wiggly-nosed boar in a misbuttoned collared shirt Victor is saying next week I'm going to be streaming cooking. That is one thing I'm not going to do. As much as I like cooking, to film cooking is a nightmare. Your no kitchen looks good naturally on camera. You have to do so much with lighting and staging and stuff to make it not look like you live in a pigsty. Rooting for dummies. Oh, that's so cute. Yes. Yeah, maybe he's trying to set up a truffle business. It says go for it, Big Drew. I'd watch. I like watching cooking, yeah. Actually, if anybody knows Dan Olson, or better known on YouTube as Folding Ideas, he's an essayist I've mentioned before that I really like. He made a video probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, about discussing the politics of food, and he focuses in on Jamie Oliver's a thing Jamie Oliver does about chicken fingers. But in it, because he's a guy who knows a lot about like filmmaking, he's a filmmaker, or was anyways. He goes through, you know, how difficult it is to film food and what a business it is to look authentic, like Welcome to My Home Kitchen, which could only look that way if it was like a $1 million set. Right, so it's only like a 20-minute video. It's an interesting essay. Max Miller must have the largest home kitchen ever if he's able to have all the equipment right over his shoulder and not trip over everything and feel claustrophobic. Yeah, every time I get a new piece of equipment, it's like I have to like break it to my partner. I have to be like, and I have to have an explanation as to like how I reasoned out that we could fit more. Jump Store says, Jamie Oliver can't cook and I will die on this hill. My gut instinct is to agree. I don't like how he cooks. I'm not going to go as strong as say he can't cook. I am going to say that he is appealing to a very specific mentality around cooking that sometimes I can understand, and sometimes I think is colored by certain social conditions that I don't like. I like that I speak in riddles, but not about anything important. Like if you guys like, if somebody in the chat likes Jamie Oliver, you don't need to apologize for that. Like his target audience is people that kind of just need to make something kind of interesting tonight, but not too hard. Zombie Wolf says, waiting for Rory's Hoarders episode. Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that I'm a writer, because when you're a writer, you don't have a lot of things to hoard, but it does come out in the kitchen. I will say, I use my equipment. All of my equipment gets used, but there's a lot of it. But not enough. I need more. Pink Wiggly Nose More in a misbuttoned collared shirt with blue pinstripes and a splotch of old coffee. When he got to the last aisle before the counter, Lou raised his fuzzy gray eyebrow and peered over the top of his book. What's your favorite piece of kitchen equipment, if folks who are into cooking? I do really like my sous vide. I think that there are certain dishes that if you make them, a sous vide makes a genuinely different result that you really cannot obtain any other way. It's not just that it's easier to do, it just does something different, and I like that. But I love my pressure cooker. I know that's... I feel like at some point pressure cookers fell out of fashion. And I guess it's because it makes people nervous. But like pressure cookers are not the same as they were in like 1975. But pressure cookers are brilliant if you know how to work them. Yeah, Zombie Wolf, I think what gets missed about Jamie Oliver is like most of us are not the target audience for him, and he definitely seems to do a service for his audience. Like the idea that if Jamie Oliver wasn't there, they might make more authentic dishes. I don't think that's true. I did ask this question before. Oh, wow. Well, that means I've run out of interesting things to say. Time to shut it down. That's the end of the channel. Your Hamilton Beach egg beaters. Hamilton Beach, underrated. I had a few Hamilton Beach things, and for the price, they just lasted. I'm peered over the top of his book. By the way, I'm getting distracted, not because I'm not interested in this, it's because I am hot. And when I am hot, I get distractible. I don't know why. Maybe somebody can explain that. Oh, your Ninja Blender. You know, the only thing I don't like about the Ninja Blender, which is why I have not got, well, at this point, because I don't have the money for it, but I have not gotten it, is I don't like that it's a plastic container, because I like to do sometimes quite hot things, and you can do that in the plastic container, but I would prefer it to be glass. And there is a Ninja Blender with glass. Welcome to this edition of the Kitchen Equipment Podcast with Rory, as you all clicked on. What am I doing? Stop talking about kitchen equipment, Rory. And peered over the top of his book. To say, Hello. I hope you are finding what you need. But if not, just say the word and I'll give you a hand. Lou didn't want to pressure such a shy little thing. Okay, how about this? What's your favorite kind of pen? I have a favorite kind of pen, but here's the problem. I used to buy them from a store that was in the university. It was a university bookstore where I was doing my creative writing degree, not my main degree. And I would just buy them. And then at some point, you know, obviously I stopped going there when I graduated. And then I'm a pen chewer. And at some point I realized that I'd like chewed the branding off all of these pens and I could not remember who they were. And then I went back to the store and they didn't have it anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what they are. They're blue. Figure that out. Lou didn't want to pressure such a shy fellow. Sure, he needed the money, but money wasn't worth a person. All the money on the riverbank wasn't worth half a person's day. Lou figured. Lou had always thought. He went back behind his book, but he heard almost instantly a soft murmur between a few wet snuffles. Zombie Wolf says, I have a glass dip pen that I like to use for my journaling. Well, la-ti-da. I didn't realize that we had royalty amongst us. I think I would break it. I write, like if there's not a hole in the paper, I'm not that bad, but I do write with a pretty intense pressure. I plan to learn calligraphy one day so that my scribbles can become at least legible to me. Calligraphy is a really pretty exercise. Those people that are so good at it, and they're just like swoop, and it's just gorgeous. It's ambient. Jumpstory says, I have this ballpoint pen that I rarely use because it writes so beautifully and smoothly, and I don't want to run out of ink and lose the best pen I've ever had. Oh, I feel that. Absolutely. Jess, going back to the favorite kitchen equipment is the Ninja Foodie, which is a like an all-in-one cookery. If you're not a person who's like obsessive and want to control every detail, the Ninja Foodie is actually pretty brilliant. He went back behind his book, but he heard almost immediately, not instantly, soft murmurs between a few wet snuffles that said... Zombie Wolf says, I like to be bougie when I can be, Rory. Oh. Well, the real bougie thing to do... My partner watches Bridgerton. Not really my thing, but I'm not going to resent it. It's just a romance novel. It doesn't need an essay about it. It's what it knows what it is. Everyone watching knows what it is. But anyways, what I learned from that show is that if you're rich, you should have ridiculous shoulders. And if you're the queen, you should have ridiculous hair. But ridiculous shoulders was what stood out for me in that show. So when you use your ink dip pen, what I think you should do is like glue your shoes to your shoulders or something. Just a couple of dozen shoes piled on top of each other, and then you'll be royalty. He went back behind his book, but he heard almost immediately soft murmurs between a few wet snuffles that said, I am looking for a book. Lou folded his novel carefully and laid it on the counter between them. Zombie Wolf says, I do have a china set made in Japan that I always use for drinking tea, even if it's just me. You know what? I'm going to do the thing I never do. I'm going to get up and I'm going to show you a cup. I'll be right back. First of all, I have a bunch of china that I also really like using. I got on like discounts and inherited, but this is my favorite cup. It's a handmade cup by a First Nations artist. I cannot remember the name of, that I bought at our local anthropology museum. It's not the cleanest right now, but it has this really, I don't know if this is capturing the depth of its glaze inside. It has a really beautiful, deep, semi-iridescent, orangey, fiery glaze inside. And then it has a black finish outside with a very, it's not going to focus well. There we go. A very finely cut into it, both pattern along the bottom here. It's all tactile. The black itself is sort of textured and matte. And then you can feel the inset cuts. And then it has little birds, little hummingbirds on it that even have sort of stroke marks for its to represent its feathers. And this red line on it. It's super, super comfy in the hand. It's for, you know, whatever, tea or coffee. I actually often drink coffee in it. It is an absolute work of art. It's the most I've ever paid for a cup. I think it was like $100 Canadian. So like $10 American. But I bought it because I like art and I like expression. It was very genuine. It's obvious that there's craft in this. But to your point, you know, I think sometimes there's this view that like aesthetics and beauty and something that just feels good to be around is only for special occasions. But I think these sorts of things are for every day. I love this cup so much. I got up in the middle of my stream and grabbed it. Okay. Lou folded his novel carefully closed. he could see the spotlight of the moment had robbed the poor creature of his words. So he waited until the words came to his... What's the name of that little, like, jowls you get? I feel like it has an actual name. Tammy says, I got my daughter an old-looking leather journal and a special pen for Christmas last year. Yeah, if that's something you're going to interact with a lot. I'm not going to get up and get this, but maybe I'll remember it from another stream. For a while there, I was really writing a lot of things by hand in First Draft, which I still do sometimes. It's a good way to, like, make sure you're not adding a bunch of nonsense. But I have I sort of cut and dyed leather book that's an image of a sort of desert horizon, but that was bought for me. It's really beautiful. It was, again, like handmade art. He could see the spotlight in the moment had robbed the poor creature of his words, so he waited until the words came to his new... Oh, yes. It's for dummies. Like not dummies, but if you don't know much about one thing, I'm not saying I'm a dummy. Jump Source is completely off topic, but I'd rip the Invisalign out of my mouth if they weren't so difficult to take out. Why is dental discomfort so hard to ignore? Well, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about the psychology of pain. But I don't know if it's going to really help explain why dental specifically stands out. But in general, pain is a marker. It's your body communicating with itself that there's something you need to tend to. And pain is really important, right? Because, like, whatever version of us along the evolutionary tree that didn't feel pain is long dead because they got stabbed in the leg and didn't notice it, right? Like, and then just bled out walking home, right? Like, pain is a communication to yourself that there's something to be done. The tough thing is, though, you're purposely invoking pain for healing reasons, but your body has no mechanism for understanding that. And that is a fact that's not helpful nor comforting, but a fact all the same. It sounds miserable, Jump Store. I am glad I never had to wear anything like that. But if you don't know much about one thing, I'm not saying I'm a dummy. The boar, the little boar, said, becoming obviously frustrated with himself. I don't know how well I'm going to sleep tonight. I don't know. That's a rough one. Lou smiled and said, "Why, yes. Books for beginners." We all are beginners at something. Hardly dummies. There. Okay, did I come back? It looks like it disconnected there for a minute, so I'm hoping I caught it in time. Zombie Wolf says, objection, I'd argue any knowledge is helpful, Rory. I have forgotten what that was in reference to, as would be expected on these streams. I'm good. Okay. Rooting for my name oh no, I think it'd be like they'd answer it first. Rooting for the fancy mushrooms. Oh, Zombie Wolf says, when you went into the psychology of pain, Rory. Ah, yes. Oh, right, because I said it wasn't used for it. Yeah, I just mean that I wanted to acknowledge that when you're in pain, having someone coming along and being like, well, actually, your pain is very helpful is probably not very comforting. I just wanted to respect that Jumpstore is in misery, and I'm not trying to be like, did you know? Like that's supposed to make you feel better. But yes, I agree. Knowledge is good to have. As a character in something I wrote recently said, you view pain in the specter of evil men as a weapon. But it is the thing that tells you something needs your attention. Rooting for the fancy mushrooms, the black ones. Zombie Wolf says, did Rory just call me out? No. Not at all. I was just explaining why I added the frame. I don't think you've done anything to diminish anybody. I probably would have whined about it if you did. I find your facts interesting. Rooting for the fancy mushrooms, the black ones. The boar said, looking at his hooves. And the floor they dinted. Lou gave a knowing nod and walked to find the shelf where a beginner's guide to truffle rooting could be found. I did call you out for your fancy glass pen coming in here. Pretending like my ballpoint pen ain't any good. I think we have people who are actually from the South, so I just want to apologize to that entire region for the best Southern accent in all of Canada. Lou gave a knowing nod and walked to find the shelf where a beginner's guide to truffle roasting could be found. As he flipped through the books, the snuffling little pig said, my name is Grimbly. Grimbly Wibbles. You sure are. Zombie Will says, well, what can I say, Rory? I'm just on a different level of class. I do like that. I do like the idea of like a character in a story, and I'm trying to establish that they're classy, and they're like, have just a really ostentatious pen. Truthfully, I've seen the glass dip ink pens, and I respect it. They're beautiful, and if you're good with them, you can make beautiful things. But I think I just don't have the patience. I just have ballpoints. I'm boring, and I can't use any of those like really. People like sometimes when they find out I'm a writer will give me some fancy like metal tip pens, but I will wreck those. Because I just put too much pressure on the page. I need a ballpoint. It needs something like that's seen some stressed out students use it. You know, it's built for the trenches of somebody who's a little too intense. Zombie Wolf says, mine is a glittery rainbow colored one. That's beautiful. GS says, I'm trying to think of what ostentatious thing I have. Copics. Well, depending on how many Copic pens you have, that's the most money in the chat. Beautiful pens. Good lord, are they expensive. As he flipped through the books, the snuffling little pig said, my name is Grimbly. Grimbly Wibbles, by the way. If you want to, like, know that, I'm okay with that being he sniffed and rubbed his big wobbly nose on his sleeve, failing to finish his sentence. What's your, like, I mean, since we're on the topic, what's people's, like, fancy thing that they're proud of, I guess? Proud is a weird thing to say, but I guess we're a consumerist culture, so we're proud of the things we buy. I mean, for me, it's obviously probably the cup or my sword, which I've shown on the stream before. My saber. But what's your thing? I mean, obviously, Zombie Wolf has the fine china and the alcohol markers, but what about the rest of you folks? He sniffed and rubbed his big wobbly nose on his sleeve, failing to finish his sentence. Lou plucked, tipped the book off the shelf, then groaned as he pushed back up to stand before saying, well, Hello, Mr. Wibbles. Mr. Grimly Wibbles. It is a pleasure to meet such a polite fellow as you. My name is Looper Kalia, but most folks call me Lou. I knew that, but I thought it would be rude to assume. The little boar said with a half smile. I like how many books you have. I do as well. Lou added as he began to write out the receipt for Grimly. Jumpstore says, I have a fancy teacup that I found at a thrift store. It was all alone with its saucer and it looked so sad and lonely. I took it upon myself to take it home. I like to use it when I want to feel fancy. That's lovely. I like that it has a personality and a backstory. Jumpstore says, I might say I have a habit of projecting human traits on things. I mean, we as a species kind of have that issue. Do you ever get in, like, what was the book that we came up with? I had wanted him to end this on fishing, but I don't think we're going to have time. Younger books. He said, pausing, then in a burst, asking about Attack on Koi Pond, and there was a couple of other ones. The Catfish Rider, that's right. And Catfish Rider. Plus a few dozen others. As quick as a pedal on the river. No, that's stupid. As quick as... Sure. As quick as a flip. No, I know what it is. As quick as a skip of a stone. Lou found a friend in the nervous little Grimly. They talked through to the evening, pausing when Lou was helping customers. They both liked adventure books. The kind that the older owls insisted were just for kids. They laughed and ended their conversation with some buttered scones and a few salted herring. Grimbley ended up buying out most his shelf. Jumpstore says the teacup is Rosalia and the saucers are partner Australis. That one I'm less certain on pronunciation. Australis? They're well named, anyways. Jumpstore. Grimly ended the day by buying out most of Lou's young adventure shelf, much to Lou's surprise. Turns out the shy boar had a few good turns at the market, using his proud nose to find large truffles. I was right the first time. Oh, good. Jumpstore says, don't second guess yourself, Rory. Well, if years of therapy couldn't change that. Turns out the shy boar had a few good turns at the market, at the roost market. Tammy says, I got a dish set for a wedding present over 30 years ago, then I lost most of it. Then about 10 years ago, my daughter found the same set at a thrift store and got them for me. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, your daughter was very kind, Tammy. She dropped by to let us know that you were okay, which is very nice. I think I forgot to mention that on Tuesday. I also feel like I didn't do a service to Eku's entry to our addition to our pros, which I feel bad about. Tuesday is a day where I have to like be really focused, so I feel like I miss a lot of things in chat. It turns out the shy boar had a few good turns at the roost market, using his proud nose to find selling large truffles that his proud nose rooted out. He was looking for the book to see if he could make a living of it. But for now, spent his earnings on the dreams of a given by a good book. Well, I got to nothing I intended, but I like what I wrote. Lou thought fondly of this day. Except that it got too dark to fish. Ah, well, he said to himself. There's always tomorrow. Zombie Wolf says maybe the real RPG was the China set stories we told along the way. I think we did a fine job RPGing, but like I wanted to... I should have left it on a cliffhanger last time because I had an idea of like what the story on this floating bookshop was, and he was supposed to learn about it in Roost by the fireside. I was like, okay, well, I'm out of time. I'll come back to it next time, and I still didn't. Oh, I forgot one thing before I read this story back. The whole point of that. For Lou's part, his new friend had expended more than enough to secure his next order of books. There's some resolution to a conflict. It's almost a story. Has anyone tried this game on their own? Because again, I never feel like I'm doing it much justice, because there is a whole element of like, you got to keep your books and make sure that you have enough books in, like, keep your accounting going and make sure that you have enough books, or you order more books and you have good days and busy days and whatever. Like, it's more mechanically immersive than I can really get into here. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was a third part of our story about Lupercalia, or Lou, our little gray fox, who is a character we made for the game Fox Curio's Floating Bookshop, a Year Upon a River. Something that we have been coming back to as each season breaks, because it's a game that is run around various seasons. If you are interested in this book, by the way, I will link to it down below in the comments. I don't obviously make it. I don't have any benefit from it, but I will say that if you want to order it right now, it's a part of the bundle Tabletop RPGs for Palestine on itch.io, and you can get it and a whole bunch of others for a really good price. So I do recommend that. Either way, though, it's an excellent. You can get all those RPGs for actually less than the it alone. On top of having beautiful art, though, it also just has wonderful mechanics. And the story that we came up with today was about the start of Burn. Burn is one of the 5 seasons in the game's world, and during Burn, it's sort of summer, everything kind of dries up, gets warm, and eventually you start getting thunderstorms that can start fires, but not in a super destructive way, and that fire season is the gist of why it's called Burn. So it's a part of that. We didn't really get to any burning, I'll say that right now, but we did get to a story of summer and running our little floating bookshop. Lou pulled his nightly tea from the ice chest for a cool morning cup. Burn had sweltered in on a wave of still and thick air that clung to his fur. He was bound to get a hot spot in his undercoat if he didn't do all he could do to stay cool, but even the river was flowing slower and warmer. The melt was nearly done, and so the season only promised warmer waters yet. Also, these were the right conditions for mosquitoes and biting flies of the river's basins. Still, Lou dabbed the cool dew of his cup of iced tea over the gray fur of his snout, trying to get as cool as he could. And to some extent, the old fox was just marinating in the moment, enamored by the rising sun and how the shores buzzed to life in the morning. To perhaps a greater extent, though, Lou was also avoiding starting his day, for today the shelves of his little bookshop floating out there on the river were getting more and more gaps, like a pup losing its young teeth. The receipts were piled up high enough on the spike that the spike had no more point left, exposed enough to capture more of them. This meant that the floor behind his humble counter and hand-crank cash machine was littered with loose receipts, as if some tree of accounting had shed its dull little leaves for tax season. Lou snarled at the busy work, wishing he could sip his iced tea and fish, but relenting that he was a grown fox with tasks to complete. Thus, as the bugs in the air grew thicker, Lou sipped his tea and flicked his abacus right to left, working away at his accounting and inventory. It was a funny little abacus he used. One of the Rewberry kids up the river had fashioned it out of abandoned snail shells and acorns hollowed out by grubs, then left to weather through the winter. The kids had built it for Lou as a trade for the adventures of the Coyote Kid, a book Lou felt they might have been a bit young for, but still thought little harm could come of the trade. I don't know why it just got rid of my window. Lou threw in the attack on Koi Pond as well. The kids left his shop then, fighting over who would get to read what first. Now, this abacus might sound less like a gift and more like simple garbage, but it was not unusual for the river folk to fashion such devices out of simple forage. Truthfully, Lou had already fashioned his own abacus in a very similar way when he first took on the floating bookshop, but he liked the Rewberry Kids one more. It had the imperceptible glow of youthful effort with a dash of endearing shabbiness, such childhood projects often carry. Despite the musing and daydreaming of Lou, he did eventually slide the last chestnut across his abacus and slot away the last box of receipts, finishing his inventory. He had an extensive list of books to order now, but he was a bit shy on the cash to cover that order, so he turned his attention to trying to draw in more customers. A few had cycled in and out during the morning while he was doing inventory, but most just read a few covers, then scurried off to swim away the humid day. It was around noon that Lou was eyeing his fishing pole, given how quiet the shop was, when in snuffled a shy little boar. He was a citizen of Roost, where the bookshop had been moored since last season. Lou knew that, and that his name was Grimbley, because he would often eye Lou's storefront at the dock, but would always find cause to scurry off when Lou went out to greet him. This led Lou to ask around about the frumpy little boar, and most spoke well of him, but none knew much of his life or likes. He was, by all accounts, a pretty shy little boar, and Lou knew this to be the kind of folk that he couldn't be too forward with, or the poor thing would startle off again into the undergrowth. Lou pretended to read a book instead, and let the snorting guest browse his store in peace. Slowly and with frequent nervous glances, the pink wiggly-nosed boar in a misbuttoned collared shirt with a blue pinstripes and a splotch of old coffee. Oh, that's a fragment. Moved up the aisles, closer and closer to where Lou was reclining. When the boar finally got to the last aisle before the counter, Lou raised his fuzzy gray eyebrow and peered over the top of his book to say, Hello! I hope you are finding what you need. But if not, just say the word and I'll give you a hand. Lou didn't want to pressure such a shy fellow. Sure, he needed the money, but all the money on the riverbank wasn't worth half a person's day. Lou had always thought anyways. He went back behind his book, but he heard almost immediately the soft murmurs between a few wet snuffles that said, I'm looking for a book. Lou folded his novel closed and laid it gently on the counter between them. He could see the spotlight of the moment had robbed the poor creature of his words, and so he waited until those words came to him. It's for dummies. Like, not dummies, but if you don't know much about one thing... I'm not saying I'm a dummy, the little boar said, becoming obviously frustrated with himself that he could never find the words when he needed them. Lou smiled and said, "Why, yes. Books for beginners. After all, we're all beginners at something. There are only so many hours in a day, after all. What was it you were looking to better yourself at, sir?" "Rooting for the fancy mushrooms, the black ones," the boar said, looking at his hooves in the wood-slat floor they were denting. Lou gave a knowing nod and walked quietly to find the shelf where a beginner's guide to truffle rooting could be found. And as he flipped through the books, the snuffling little pig sidled up and said, My name is, Grimbly. Grimbly Wibbles, by the way, if you want to, know that. I'm okay with that being, no. He sniffed and rubbed his big wobbly nose on his sleeve, failing to finish his sentence. Lou tipped the book off the shelf, then groaned as he pushed back up to standing before saying, "Well, hello, Mr. Grimbly Wibbles." Did it autocorrect me or did I miss that spell? "It is a pleasure to meet such a polite fellow as you. My name is Lupercalia, but most folks call me Lou." "I knew that, but I thought it'd be rude to assume," the little boar said with a half smile. "I like how many books you have." "I do as well," Lou added as he began to write out the receipt for Grimbly. "Do you ever get in, younger books?" he said, pausing. Then in a burst, asked about Attack on Koi Pond and The Catfish Rider, plus a few dozen others. As quick as a skip of a stone, Lou found a friend in the nervous little Grimbly. They talked through to the evening, pausing only when Lou was helping some customers. They both seemed to like a lot of the same adventure books, the kind that the older owls insisted were just for kids. They laughed and ended their conversation with some buttered scones and a few salted herrings. Grimbly ended the day by buying out most of Lou's young adventure shelf, much to Lou's surprise. It turned out the shy boar had a few good turns at the Roost Market, selling large truffles that his proud nose has rooted out when he was hiking. He was looking for this book, the one he originally came in for, to see if he could make a living out of it, but for now spent almost all the earnings he had made on the dreams given by a good book. For Lou's part, his new friend had expended more than enough to secure his next order of books. Pretty good day. In fact, Lou thought fondly of this day, except that it got too dark too soon for him to fish. "Ah, well," he said to himself, "there's always tomorrow." All right. We will return to our little fox on the river. I don't know when. The next season is what? Let's find out. I don't think I've actually looked. Brimming. Ooh. I think Brimming is still like a summery season. Yeah. It's like late summer. So we'll probably come back to it at that point. All right. Zombie Wolf says, random trivia. I got distracted by the fact that Tammy Morelli just above that said, "I fall asleep listening to 90 Day Fiancé." I fall asleep listening to stuff. There's something about 90 Day Fiancé that made me laugh. I don't know why. It just wasn't what I expected. There's no judgment in it. It just was unexpected. Zombie Wolf says, random trivia. The history of tea sets has been traced back to the Han Dynasty in China, 206 to 220 BC. And the oldest surviving teapot has been dated to 1513, also originating in China. Very cool. Right. Yeah, Jump Store is talking about tonguing their Invisalign. That's what I would do. GS says, that was great, Rory, in all caps. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, GS. Thank you. Zombie Wolf says, I can't wait to return to this wholesome little world. Indeed. And hey, if you folks want to make your own floating bookshop and let me know about it, I'd be happy to hear about them. Jump Store says, looking forward to it. I'm glad. And Tammy says, thank you, Rory, for the wonderful time tonight. It was great and informative. I hope you all have a great night and sweet dreams, everyone. Indeed. I hope you all find a place where you can cool down. I considered putting on my exit window, which is the sunny one where you can hear the air conditioning running. But I decided that I preferred the fantasy that it was raining. So we're going to stick with the raining one. Jump Store. Making jokes. Anyhow, thank you everybody for tuning in. What a fun stream. I always really enjoy my time with this game. I don't know what we're doing next week, but we're doing something. So if you like folklore, come back on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And if you like this, well, then I'll see you next Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to go play Elden Ring because it's probably released in 15 minutes. So you guys have kept me distracted from the fact that I had to wait because I play on console. Anyways, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Yeah, casually walk out of my chill little floating bookshop.